independent truckers are putting together, and there's 1.8 million of them. I don't know if all of them will participate. There's 3.7 million truckers, across the country. So this is nearly half of the truckers. And if you're an independent operator, are you going to take part in this boycott of getting goods into New York? Specifically, again, I know if you work for a company, you may feel like you'd like to do that. I don't want you to be quitting your jobs because you guys are the backbone of our economy. But for the legal case, before I get back to that, Andy, what happens? What does Donald Trump do next?
Okay, the next step, of course, is to take the case that has been found against him in the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court of New York, remember, is the lowest trial court in New York State, even though they call it the Supreme Court. The next step is to move to the appellate division. That's an intermediate appellate court in New York. And so Trump can appeal this ruling of Judge Engoron to the appellate division of the Supreme Court and see what the appellate division does. Now, this was, and I've read it, it's about a 95-page ruling in this case, in which the judge goes into great detail about financial matters and financial transactions that took place in his findings and conclusions of law. That should not scare anybody just because it's a long order, but it is comprehensive, and they're going to defer to the findings of fact that are made by the trial judge in this case.
Yep. So if you were him, do you put up the 10% and move forward?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I would say that I would do that. Really, and move forward. I really would in this case and get it. I mean, 3 years is going to be gone before you know it. Right. And he doesn't lose control of his organization as a receiver would have done. That would have been devastating if the judge had appointed a receiver or a trustee to take over. He's got a monitor who's just going to look at him a little bit more under the microscope, is going to look at things before they occur, not after they occur, and a compliance officer, which actually is a good idea. Internally, it's not a bad idea to have an internal compliance officer to make sure you comply with the rules and regulations of the state, of the SEC, and so forth, to whomever you report. So in a sense, I think that did him a favor, the compliance officer.
You can figure out the $350 million, but get this compliance officer in over this 3 years. It's pretty tough for them to come back 3 years later and say, you were doing things wrong, because they signed off on all of it. That's
right. The compliance officer is going to come in 3 years from now after this period of monitoring, and that's 36 months, and they're going to ask him questions about what went on, and they're going to say, well, Mr. Compliance Officer, Miss Compliance Officer, you agreed to this. You found this to be the case. You found and blessed it and said that it was okay that he was doing. How hard is it going to be at that point to put further sanctions on Trump? Pretty hard at that point.
So I want to go right back to those phones. We're going to go in order. Ron in Wisconsin, online too. Ron, first, let me thank you for being part of the backbone of America. You're on the air.
I appreciate it. I want to support the truckers that independent can afford to not go back to New York. Stay out of there. I don't need to anymore. I don't need to go to New York.
Okay. So you think, is there widespread support, Ron, within the independent trucking community for this move? It seems from our callers that there is, but I kind of like to get the bigger sense.
Yeah, I think that there is truckers and most everybody else that I would talk to were real tired of the way things are going on in this country, and that Donald Trump case, that's terrible. That's so un-American. I can't believe it.
Yep.
That they can even have to go to court for something like that.
Well, and he's such a big supplier too. I mean, to New York. I mean, you would think about all the hotels, all the things that are being delivered just to Donald Trump properties, not to everything else in New York. So it's a huge move. Let's go back to the phones at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Randall in Tennessee on line 6. I love you all calling today, truckers, because this is really a show the American people need to hear from you about what kind of impact this could have. Randall, you're on the air.
What happens, I've been doing this 45 years, done a lot of New York stuff, and what happens is trucks get short is what a broker would call it, so the price goes up, and then somebody will take it anyway, so the people in New York pay the price.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this goes back, Andy, to the idea that President Trump has floated. He's already moved the company out of New York to Florida, but obviously doing most of the business still is in those assets in Florida. I mean, in New York. But he's floated the idea of selling it all off and starting over in places that are more friendly.
Yeah, why not? I mean, why would you stay in a state and stay in the belly of the beast? I mean, this is an adverse state. It's a hostile state. New York, I'm talking about, treats him poorly. Who's the victim here in this case? Who lost money? What creditors were defrauded? What people suffered financial losses as a result of anything President Trump and his organization did? The answer to all those questions is no one and nothing. Why would you stay there? I'd get up and move it.
I want to go to Wayne in Texas online, too. This is about the case. It all ties in together. Hey, Wayne, welcome to Secular. You're on the air.
Yeah, I don't understand the complexities of commercial financing like they're going through, but just on my own level, if I was going to put my house up for sale or I was going to contact a bank for, say, an equity loan, I tell them what I think it's worth, then they get back with me what they think it's worth. I put it up for sale, and somebody else gets back with, and it goes on. This would be like the government coming on and going, oh, no, you're cheating people by trying to value it at that price, and we're going to punish you.
Yeah, I think, again, this idea that there were no witnesses, Andy, that said he didn't pay his loans back right there.
I mean, there was no one that was harmed in the case, and I keep coming back. I was a prosecutor most of my life. Victimless crimes, you don't get convictions on. You don't get bad results and bad judgments, and yet in this case, you've got a victimless crime in which no one was harmed, and a $350 million fine was imposed as a judgment on behalf of the Attorney General of New York. What did that accomplish except hurt a business, the Trump organization?
Yeah, and again, when he values Mar-a-Lago at 10 or 12 million, even though he can't buy those lots, this number just seems kind of made up. I mean, Andy, it's like this judge made it up, but it could lead to a criminal trial.
It could very well lead to
that's the second
criminal.
part of this.
Well, that's what they're up to here. They're just setting him up. What they're doing is setting him up for future criminal trials, and those two are not going to succeed, as the one I think in Georgia is going to fall apart, and I think the one in the District of Columbia is going to fall apart too. Leave the man alone. He's doing good for the country in terms of the economy in New York, and yet now you're imposing a huge fine on him. Where does that get you? Nowhere, in my opinion.
All right, so what's up on the Trump legal calendar very quickly, folks? So we are waiting. That's President's Day, so we won't likely get the order from the U.S. Supreme Court, the decision on the 14th Amendment, but Andy, probably early this week. So probably tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, but certainly I would think by the end of this week because so many people are voting. You've also got the immunity issue as well. I mean, so a lot at the Supreme Court on the stay on that about how Jack Smith will proceed. So we've got a lot to talk about, politics as well.